Hello. Good afternoon. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to this panel on digitizing in down markets. My name is Jenny Dvorak. I am the VP of Product here at Affinity, and I will be moderating this panel today. The topic we will be discussing with our panelists is around how they are balancing the need to stay competitive in this challenging deal landscape with a desire to cut costs and do more with less. So to stay competitive in VC, there's a recent Gartner report that predicts that over the next 18 months, so by 2025, 75% of VC investment reviews will be influenced by data and AI. So that's not very far away, less than 18 months from now, actually, and imposes a creeping deadline to modernize these kinds of systems. But I think we all know that investing in data, investing in AI, modernizing systems and processes comes at a cost. And that cost is it takes time and it takes money. So to share perspective on this topic today, I'm really excited to be joined by these panelists here as leading operators in the space to share their perspective on how they're balancing and navigating these different challenges, as many of you here in the audience might be facing as well, or might be facing very soon in the future. So to our panelists, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to deep dive on this topic with you. Thank you so much for joining and being here at this topic in this panel. Let's do a quick round of introductions. Andrew, I'll start with you. Just tell us firm name and role.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Saforik. I'm the head of technology at Anthos Capital. We're a generalist growth stage firm based out of Santa Monica and Seattle. And my background is in web technology as a early hire and founder of various startups. And I've been on most parts of the startup roller coaster. And I've been with Anthos for about 2 years now.
Hi, everyone. Diogo Henriquez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at BAM Elevate, which is the growth equity business of Balyasny Asset Management. BAM's a $20 billion hedge fund with 15 offices globally. We invest across asset classes, including equities, commodities, credit, macro. Growth equity is our most recent strategy, and we're really focused on leveraging our entire platform to help our portfolio companies from Series B all the way to IPO.
Hi, everyone. Ryan Bateman. I am Chief Technology Officer at Sands Capital. Sands Capital is also an equity growth asset manager. We have a very large public equity growth investment business, as well as a venture capital business for basically representing opportunities to invest in growth companies at all stages of their life cycle, from stage B-ish all the way up to the public stages.
Hi, everyone. I am Amber Quinones. I'm the head of platform and operations at BBG Ventures. If I had to guess, I'm probably the David in this room of Goliaths. We're a fairly small fund. So I joined as our first head of platform 2.5 years ago, and I've spent quite a bit of my time trying to figure out how to make sure that we can get to your stage. So we're a super lean team investing in women and diverse founders at the pre-seed to Series A stages, and typically like to lead deals.
All right, thank you so much again for being here. Let's go ahead and dive into our first question. And this one stems from Andre Rederoth's Data-Driven VC Landscape report, where he found that 1% of VC firms are considered data-driven today. And he defines being data-driven as having at least one engineer and being proven to develop internal tooling in at least one stage of the investment process. So as operators who are leading the way on digitizing operations within your firms, would love if you could tell us a little bit more about your tech stack. How are you using data, or where are you using data in your tech stack, and how are you using it?
Yeah, I think Ray touched on this a little bit earlier today, that data-driven sort of means whatever you want it to mean, depending on who you're talking to and about what. And so it's nice to have a bit of a framework around how to think about it. I was really the first person at the firm tasked with thinking about this as a challenge to solve end to end. So I was granted sort of a blank slate, which a lot of people don't have the luxury of, which is really nice. So one of the first things we had to solve was, well, where does our data go? And that's how we ended up here at Affinity. So a lot of the past year and a half has been deciding what our cornerstone platforms are going to be, and then investing in those, configuring them the way we wanted to, making them integrate the way we want to. And in the past maybe 4 or 5 months has really been when we've turned our eyes towards the horizon and think like, what does the future look like? What's actually possible now that our things are organized? now that LLMs have completely upended anything that anybody thought they were doing a year ago. And a lot of that focus has just been on preparing for a world where the AI market rapidly shifts underneath our feet, and knowing that most of the commoditized features we'll be able to buy in the market hopefully soon, if not already. So a lot of just getting our own house in order, getting our data organized, access and permissions controls in place, integrating all of our various data sources so that we're integration ready with whatever the platforms of the future are going to be.
Yeah, in our case, I think data was really at the core of the decision that BAM made to enter the growth equity space. Ray touched on this earlier, but if you look at the hedge fund industry and public equities in particular, about a decade ago, alternative data and data science completely transformed the way those investors approach the asset class that they're investing in, right? Today, you'll really struggle to find a hedge fund, even a fundamentally driven hedge fund, that doesn't use data and data science in some shape or form as part of their investment process, right? It's critical in terms of idea generation. It's critical in terms of due diligence. On the VC side of things, in my opinion, we're still very much in the early days of adoption, right? People are starting to use it, but, there's different beliefs about how valuable it is. And, adoption is very uneven. And so from our perspective, we thought there was a real opening there to come in with a differentiated value proposition where data was at the core of what we do. And so we use it really across the entire value chain if you think about investing, from sourcing to due diligence to portfolio support, and Affinity is very much at the center of that.
So at Sands Capital, it was a little bit different. I think I started the journey in about 2018. I wrote a memo on digital transformation in our firm. And at that point, I've been the CTO for 13 years, so it's been a long journey. But the value of data was really different, let's say before 2018, at least in our business's mind, where the third-party data that you get from all these different sources was seen as valuable and internal data was seen as very low value. People really didn't get the story. And so I started this journey in 2018 of trying to build recognition for the value of our own data internally, and to start to leverage the assets that we had internally that just were being underutilized. And so digital transformation is a really significant effort. It's not just sort of automating certain things or building data warehouses. It's really a wholesale process of making data as BAM has at the center of how the firm operates. And so going from a really fundamental asset manager who got into venture capital, we started our VC about 8 years ago. And so, for us, it was a journey of building out our own capabilities. So think really modern data tooling, data warehousing, visualization, analytics, modeling, and reporting and dashboards. But leveraging our own internal information and all the data we built up over the decades, along with a lot of different data sources to bring, I guess you might call it like a quantamental kind of approach to a really fundamental business. And we've seen a lot of traction. Everything has changed over the last 6 years or so in the minds of our own staff, in that people start to, once you build the dashboard that gives the thing that is always available, the data is real time and there, that it used to take them 4 to 5 days to put together once a month or once a quarter. You win over that one individual, and then you start to win over, they start to talk to their peers. And now we have the most enormous backlog of analytics and modeling requests from all across our business, all aspects of our venture capital operations team. They've been some of our closest partners in this effort, trying to move from spreadsheet and manual report to fully automated data acquisition, analytics, data quality, data validation, and then into reporting and BI tools. So it's been a great journey for us, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion about it. But we like to think that the work that we've done puts us at the forefront of what's possible today as for a fundamental business who's not a quant in this area.
A bit related to Ryan's experience with internal data, we just don't have enough money for a lot of these external data sources. So we've ended up turning internally because we honestly just don't have the ability to afford 5 or 6 sources. And we, as a fund, BBG Ventures, is one of the oldest, 9 years, not that old, funds backing specifically women and diverse entrepreneurs. So we've seen probably most of the deals that have been done with women and diverse founders from 2014 till now, and are starting to really enrich that data and dig further into it to understand how we can get some alternative markers around what makes a strong founder, what we've seen in terms of where founders were building in 2014 and are building now, and effectively have done a bunch of trending and forecasting based on just our internal information and data sources. So for us, it was more out of necessity than the white papers that you were writing, but it's been a really exciting time to dig into our data like that.
And I'd love to play into that a little bit more and hear, we've heard from a lot of other firms that they see a lot of value in building out a really powerful tech stack, but they're prioritizing cutting costs and saving money. And so I'd love to hear from anyone who'd like to share, like, how are you deciding what use to digitize, what tools to use, and how to manage cost?
So I'm happy to take that one. My answer to that was actually Affinity. So I've worked at a couple of different other places in my career where they built internal CRMs internally, and that ended up being a huge suck in terms of resources and in terms of time, right? And so when we started building the business 2.5 years ago, one of the things that I was trying to look for was, could I find someone to partner with that gave me the core CRM functionality, which, I wasn't going to build something that was going to add that much value to my investment process relative to the next guy, right? And would allow my data science and engineering team to focus on what I actually thought was going to be value add, which in our case is everything related to portfolio support, right? And so my angle there was trying to find, someone I could partner on the software side, which you guys have been fantastic, that would allow me to build a foundation from an investment process perspective and bring in a lot of the data that I have internally that helps the team with sourcing, idea generation, diligence, et cetera.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. There's a couple things I would say. One is the idea that technology shouldn't be perceived as a cost center in a lot of ways, especially if you're talking about capabilities and then around data. There has to be, traditionally, I think tech was seen as a bit of a cost center, and it's just an expense, and it's something we should be trying to limit. If you can kind of pivot that a little bit and turn it into, this is a competitive advantage for a firm that does it well, and it's a huge competitive disadvantage for firms that don't do it well. Because having a good technology stack allows you to automate a lot of your functions, and it makes your highest quality staff more effective in their roles. It lets them elevate out of low quality menial work into value add, where they can spend more time with your LPs, they can spend more time with the portcos, they can do more work in the marketplace rather than sitting at their desk writing reports, cutting and pasting. So there's a force multiplier that you do have to invest in. The other thing I would say is kind of embracing agile methodologies. It allows you to cut costs or make the development of these types of tools and platforms cheaper because you start with use cases. So you start with a use case, then you go to a proof of concept. If you can do that, then you go to maybe an MVP, and then you start to build out large-scale platforms. So you never start building something without having absolute certainty that it's going to deliver value and probably having an estimate of that value. But I can tell you for sure it's not cheap. There's no way you can make it cheap.
And I'm curious then, are you using data more as a decision-driving tool or more like a time-saving tool?
For our team, it's time, like 1,000% of the time. Largely because, as I mentioned, we're a small team. We were 4 people until 2 months ago. Now we're 6, big jump. And the reality is we have 100 active portfolio companies, and we really try, despite, I think, their reality, to be super involved. So we've been using as many, specifically like AI co-pilots, meeting matching tools, et cetera, to really try and give everybody a bit of a chief of staff, if you will, without being able to fully hire chiefs of staff. And I think more than anything else, what we've seen the greatest value in terms of specifically data, AI, and digitization has been being able to get our team to communicate better, faster. And I think Nolan and Caroline were talking about this in the last session. Everybody wants to use their own note-taking tool, and they all want to use their own insert thing here, but being able to streamline full team communications and also give everyone that optionality of do whatever you want. Just let your AI please put it in somewhere valuable. has been pretty transformative for us.
Yeah, and I would also add, I think the question of, is it about decision making or productivity and time savings? At some point, those are sort of the same thing, because the faster you say no, the more time you freed up for the next thing. And which doesn't mean you should say no to everything like immediately, but sometimes you got to dig in. But how many times have you spent 6 weeks digging into a thing and discovered, oh, you know what, we forgot to ask this question, and that would have illuminated X, Y, and Z, and we could have made that decision faster, or we could have gotten more excited about this faster and not have been preempted in this deal. And that's one of the things where we're excited about the use of AI as a proactive assistant in some of this stuff, where it's able to increase the shelf life of some of our institutional knowledge of, hey, we've done research on this market, we've previously talked to these people about this topic, and because you're talking about something similar, don't forget to ask about this. Or, hey, this is a thing that our research suggests might be emergent in a couple of years, and we wrote that report a couple of years ago. So, be proactive about that kind of thing. So it kind of not only drives better decision making, but also gets to smarter questions faster, which as generalist investors has to be our competitive advantage.
Yeah, so I'd also love to know if you'd be open to sharing any specific examples or moments or situations where, because of the decision to use certain types of data or tools as part of your tech stack, gave you a pretty clear advantage in winning a deal.
So I'll give one example. I think being able to partner with you guys has been incredibly helpful because, as I mentioned, we didn't have to build a custom CRM from scratch internally, and freed up a lot of our time on our data science and engineering team. That time has been spent over the last 2 years and a half since we started this business, building our portfolio company portal, which we call North Star. And we wouldn't have been able to build it as quickly had it not been for Affinity, right? Because we don't need to worry about all the CRM functionality that you guys are taking care of. And so to me, that's a great example of how, you can leverage technology that already exists to actually focus your internal resources on things that are actually going to move the needle in terms of your impact in the market, your brand awareness, and how you interact with your portfolio companies.
Yeah, I would say that we're still working towards the decision point. We have proofs of concepts and things that are running, but I see sort of the efficiency as the base layer, like just adding productivity. A lot of the tools that we've been building just make the business better and make it less risky in a lot of ways. But as we sort of move forward, and I think when we reach the next level, the really driving decision-making with data is the next step that we're trying to move to. But it's a pretty big lift, and we've put a lot of effort into it and a lot of time, huge amounts of data. And, it's still, there's a lot of people that have to come on board and all agree that trusting these algorithms or these models or these signals or these factors is actually something they are going to embrace. And it's culturally a big challenge, at least in our firm. So I'd love to see more decision being driven by the tools we're building, but it's a slow, steady slog.
Well, I would like to switch gears a little bit, speaking of using models, using signals, and talk a little bit about how you're incorporating AI into your tech stacks. So tell us a little bit about how you're using or adopting AI in your firm. What are you using it for, and if or where in your investment process?
I can jump in since I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I think for us it's two-pronged. So one is marketing. Everybody has some sort of digital and forward-facing presence on our team, and we can't all spend time writing these very long Twitter/X threads about insert portfolio company here. And we've been digging further into which specific LLMs, which specific AI tools work best for which platforms. So we have our newsletter, we've got our social media AI, we've got our quarterly letter AI, really ensuring that we're not spending more than 5 hours a week collectively on marketing, but still can get something out there, because our brand, I think, is probably the biggest asset we have right now in terms of getting to the founders that we really want to be in front of. And then the second piece is that productivity. So we have the scheduling tools, we've got our internal comms. One of our portfolio companies actually enables teams to talk to one another's AIs. So instead of asking the annoying question of where's this thing, Claire or something along those lines, I can just ask her AI and we can all move on with our days.
Anyone else want to share?
Sure. One of the things that I alluded earlier, that we've been doing a lot of data organization, just getting our own stuff in order. And we spent a lot of time in May and June thinking through like, all right, what is the value chain of our internal efforts? And like, how does this all map out across the jobs and functions that need to get done? And we're not there yet, but building like, what is a 3-year roadmap look like for where we should be applying AI to focus and prioritize? Because I'm a small team of one, very reliant on outside vendors. So, I can't do all 9 things I want to do today. And one of the things that became clear is every one of those requires us to be able to measure efficacy. And a lot of our focus is about, can we fill the top of the funnel? Can we leverage this proprietary network we have? Can we get more signal from the relationship conversations people are having to generate like leads for the sourcing team? Can we proactively deliver them? All that kind of stuff. And one of the things we realize is no matter what system we build or integrate, it needs some feedback mechanism, because and I think OpenAI proved this to everybody last year, is that as soon as you integrate human feedback into the loop, everything gets exponentially better. And that is true at like both an AI and an actual human intelligence. And so one of the things we've spent time over the summer working on, and Sawyer on our team who built it is here today, or designed kind of the problem, is like creating a standardized interface where externally sourced deal flow gets delivered to, and the team basically thumbs up, thumbs down to make it reductive a little bit. Thumbs up, thumbs down, is this good or not? It's just a baseline qualification tool. So no matter where that prospect came from, we're evaluating it. And that's sort of how we're measuring. We're basically building the measurement tool first and then plugging the AI-driven prospects into it so that we know from day one, was this actually useful? And then we can give all that feedback to whatever model we're using to generate those prospects. So we've sort of like started at both ends a little bit of like the get your data organized, but also figure out how to generate feedback and then connect them in the middle with the actual like AI outputs is sort of how we've tried to figure this out.
Yeah, just to add to that, we're actually doing something relatively similar. So on the sourcing side, we have a bunch.
Oh, it was my idea.
I know, I probably stole it last time we met. On the sourcing side, we have a bunch of models running from our data science team. One of them is actually going to be released relatively soon by Affinity. It seems you guys might have heard that idea from us or just disrupted us yourself. So we have an LLM model that essentially identifies companies that might be similar to a set of companies that you're looking at, or one particular company that you're interested in, and provides suggestions. We have that fed into a specific step in Affinity where the investment team can then thumbs up, thumbs down something, and we track what we call a data lead throughout our entire investment process. So over time, we're actually checking if those leads are any good, right? Or if investors are basically throwing that out of the pipeline from the get-go and seeing if they actually get to the investment stage. In addition to that, we also have another model where we use a machine learning where we're trying to predict given outcomes in VC. So let's say, is this company likely to actually raise in the next 12 months at a valuation 50% higher than they raised last time, right? And that's based on all the historical data that we can get our hands on and a bunch of different alternative data sources. And we have that model constantly learning based on new data that's being fed in. All of that, in our case, is fully integrated with Affinity. And so we're able to check over time the quality of those leads and see if they're being effective or not.
Can I ask how many engineers and data scientists you have?
We have a team of 8 right now. Yeah.
So similarly, we have a team of 5 right now working on machine learning and data science, but it's an effort that we've had for a number of years. So we started more with traditional neural nets and machine learning to mixed success. And we shared on, we had like a little chat before this, and I was talking about the lack of ROI on our initial efforts. We really didn't get as much out of it as we wanted, but we're so fortunate that the teams are sponsored out of our investment team. This isn't a technology function. Our AI or machine learning group is part of our investment team, and it's something that the investment team wanted to put together rather than a technology function. And now that, I guess, let's say 12 months ago, computers learned to read, which is insane. Everything's changed. So all the talk now is obviously LLMs and generative AI and the power of these sort of new models. And so we've split our efforts into 2 areas. Our AI/ML. One half of it is portfolio company analysis and pipeline analysis. So what are the impacts of generative AI and new technologies on the businesses we own today and the businesses we're considering owning, and what type of services and advice can we both bring to those companies as well as within our own investment process. And the other part is solutioning. So actively building within our firm, taking these tools, whether it be, Microsoft Azure, OpenAI, ChatGPT-4, whatever it is, or maybe Llama or something that you're running internally, and then bridging the gap between what's commercially available today and what we need and what we want to do, which is then you have to start custom building on top of these tools. And so we're trying to get to the point where we can do more scenario analysis, portfolio simulations. We have already been able to prove out, at least in proof of concept, to disqualify certain businesses from investment that the investment team thought were pretty good. And so we're starting to see some glimmers of hope in there. But it's more challenging than we thought it was going to be. And the ROI is still fairly elusive.
For the rest of you who are also using either other off-the-shelf tools or building these tools in-house, how are you managing the cost of all of that?
We're supposed to be managing the cost.
If you look at the SaaS tools, right? Like just start with just all the SaaS platforms we have. Microsoft's going to double our cost per user per month if we want to use their co-pilots. Every single SaaS platform we have is coming out with a co-pilot or an AI assistant. Some of them are included in the cost, others are additive, but we're looking at hundreds of dollars a month per staff member in additional just AI co-pilot cost, much less building something custom. It's incredibly challenging to control costs in this area because people will just sign up for stuff without even consulting the budget keepers in accounting, right? Or so it could be challenging.
The approach that we've taken is sort of twofold. One, to the SaaS point, I think, and to the previous point about what are people doing in downtimes? If I'm a SaaS or data provider, I think I can no longer assume renewals where I might have been on autopilot for a couple of years. Some of our reps have been kind of surprised when I'm asking for usage reports and looking at stuff. And we had a conversation with a vendor a few months ago where we cut the number of seats from 27 to 3 because that's all we were using. And so my pitch is, hey, cost savings. Now I get to spend it on AI. But we're kind of trying to force are we actually using these things? What is our marginal utility that we're getting out of this tool versus the next one? And is your data able to integrate with our other stuff so that we can get it to where people are using it? And as we actually then take that data and try to build something, one of the core frameworks is that I've learned building products for consulting clients is you can't go away into the wilderness for a while and go build stuff and then come out and be like, hey, isn't it amazing? Because they're like, what's he doing with all my money? You have to show incremental progress. And so one of our core things is, okay, we'll go work on this for a little bit, but we have to have a near-term win to be able to show of that effort. And so a lot of our work is okay, what's something we can do that sets us up for either an AI-driven future or better integration or whatever, but you have to have the defined use case of whose life is going to be made somewhat better. And that has to be in the MVP release version 1 so that we can prove, hey, look, we did this thing. Now we're going to go do an incremental step into the next thing.
Yeah, I think for our firm, the most valuable thing I and a team of interns have done is essentially map out the entire landscape of what someone on our team might sign up for if they go rogue and understand why. So what are all of these possible use cases and pick the best one and just make the recommendations so that it is an onerous task to get there, but I think our team is able to at least, okay, if you need something like this, here is what you should choose. It is usage-based pricing. We're not going to go broke if everybody chooses to add a seat. And I think actually to the note of usage-based pricing, that's something that I've found to be extremely encouraging over the last couple of months, is seeing that sort of adoption instead of the standard SaaS fee model, and being able to try out on my side a number of different tools to really get to what gives us the most juice and what enables us to get the bang for buck that we're really looking for. So keep an eye out. I feel like a lot of companies are going to be making a bit more of that shift, especially as they align incentives with customers.
We've had a lot of discussions internally about build versus buy, especially around these AI tools and projects. And it's a really interesting discussion because anything that we build is probably going to be surpassed by something one of our vendors is going to make, or one of the big tech companies in the next year or 2 years. So is there value in building anything? We ended up on the side of, yes, we do want to build. And probably the primary reason, and I'll steal this, Andrew said it earlier, not in this panel, but the idea that by doing these projects, we're actually structuring our data to make it more effective when that happens. Because every AI project is actually a data project in disguise. It's what my head developer says. And so by building these tools, by experimenting, and by trying to find where do these AI tools work and where do they not? What are the edges? What are the fail cases? Kind of the chaos engineering theory of building and trying. What you end up with is not maybe the tool set that you'll use for the future, but you will have structured your data in ways for those proof of concepts, those pilots, and those projects, that when the big commercial projects come, your data is going to be in an incredible state. And I think it's going to be a huge accelerator and a competitive advantage versus our peers having set the stage for these tools in a year to 2 years when they really become commercially viable, a lot of them.
And not only that, it also, I think what we've learned is it makes us more intelligent buyers in the market. So when those commercial things emerge, we're like a bit better at differentiating between them because we've played around with some of this stuff. It also makes us better investors in the market because, when our investors who, may not be AI experts or like data engineering experts encounter something, they're able to speak to our dev team or like, our team to basically be like, did you guys try this out? Like, how are we actually solving this problem? So it gives us a little bit of surface area to test all those things out. And at the end of the day, just I think makes us all smarter about this thing that we're living in that is very easy to just be like, oh, I don't know, it's hard math and stuff. So like, we'll let the engineers deal with it. But now everybody's kind of living it. And so we're all smarter buyers because of it.
Yeah, so looking forward a little bit, I'd love to hear your predictions about how you think private capital investors will start to adopt AI over time. So as I mentioned, the Gartner report in the beginning that the majority of VCs will be using AI to evaluate their deals by like 2025 in their investment process. I guess on the spectrum from like this is totally impossible to this is absolutely inevitable, how do you see this shift playing out? And especially with the cost-cutting trend that we've been seeing across a lot of other firms. What are your thoughts?
In our opinion, I think it's inevitable. We're definitely down that road. I think what we saw, 10, 15 years ago happening with public equity investors is going to happen in the private markets too. I do think it's going to take a while for people to adopt the technology and to adopt it in their internal processes because both are just as important. And I think there's a real benefit to scale. And so platforms like Affinity and many others are going to pop up in this market and they're going to get increased adoption, but it's going to take time to actually change investor behavior and to adapt to using those effectively.
I think on my side of the market, it also feels pretty inevitable when you think about emerging managers and just how small those fees are getting when, the average fund size in 2022, I think, was around 80 million. And this year it's been closer to 40 million. So we have got to figure out how to continue delivering on those promises and have got to be smarter, more agile than we've ever been before. So it feels like, yes, it's very expensive to invest in data and AI, and also it's less expensive than a full-time staff member usually.
Yeah, I think the overall like effort that goes into it, it's funny because like for a smaller firm, sort of like you guys, it's like so much more appealing to be like, oh, we can get 2 FTE of productivity out of these things. But to Ryan's point about like stuff like we're demoing the Google Workspace Duet integration because we're a Google shop, and it's literally more expensive per user to add Duet than it is to pay for Google Workspace to begin with. And so at some point, there's almost a tipping point where it's like, all right, if I'm a team of 5, it's cheaper for me to pay for 5 AI tools. But if I'm a team of 50, it might be cheaper for me to go hire 5 assistants for the team to actually do that stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But I think the encouraging thing is that it's not like something that's just happening to this industry. Like you have to look at other marketplaces or like other markets and segments to see how they're adjusting, because really at the end of the day, we're just talking about like, how do we take our qualitative information and merge it with our structured data and make it better, make us all better at doing our jobs. And that's literally the whole economy is going to have to figure that out. And that's what I think is going to be really interesting of how it develops sector by sector. And so in our case, I think that it's going to be, to your point, it's going to be inevitable. And it will manifest differently in different funds because like we're seeing a big marginal lift when we invest in how do we weaponize our qualitative research. And we might not get the same thing on the quantitative side, which might be completely different for somebody who's a quant.
I'll put one more vote in the inevitable column. I think we have a universal agreement here. And for me, it's just that since the last time I've seen this level of excitement and just explosion of energy was the internet, right? Was 1998, 1999, 2000 as the internet exploded. This has the same feel, and I've been working in technology this entire time, and I haven't seen anything else that caught the imagination of literally every single human being that's seen the technology work. And so, science fiction is becoming a reality, and I think speed is probably going to be of adoption is going to be a differentiator. Dragging your feet on it, you'll get there, and everyone's going to have it. These are going to be commodities, but I really do feel like organizations and individuals who adopt and adapt and learn and bring that growth mindset and just go at this new technology are going to gain an advantage over their peers, whether as an individual basis or as a business.
So I'm going to play the devil's advocate just a tiny little bit here. And with everybody being in the camp of this is absolutely inevitable, when do you think private capital investors will see ROI on this tool using AI? How long is it going to take?
There going to be some people who are already
I think it depends on how you measure ROI from my perspective, right? From a productivity perspective, I think you'll see those results relatively soon, right? There's clear savings from a time perspective on how long certain things are going to take to get done once you start using some of these tools. From like an investment perspective, I think that might take a little bit longer. And it's going to be very dependent on what's the edge that each fund actually brings.
Yeah, the internal ROI, I think, is available today. I think the investment ROI is a whole other, that's way outside of my pay grade. But in the internal side, like we had an instance a couple of weeks ago where we were talking to a company that has a key ingredient which is highly regulated in a variety of markets, and we use Glean internally as like a search tool across Notion, Google Drive, email, all that kind of stuff, and soon our Affinity nodes, and so it's already enabled us to say we ask its AI hey, what do we know about market segment X, and it spit out a couple of paragraphs about work we had done, and in there was some insight that our research team had done for a completely unrelated company, but also with a regulated substance that one of their diligence reports just happened to also include this thing we were looking at. And it was from 6 years ago. Nobody had any idea it was in there. And it saved us, I don't know, maybe a couple hours or a couple of days. It's unknowable. But it was one of those things where we were like, oh, okay, this just allowed us to move faster and asking smart questions in this category. And so for us, I'm like, that's ROI immediately. One of the nice things about working in an industry where most people are fairly aggressively compensated is that you don't have to save that much time for ROI in productivity to pay for itself for a project.
Well, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to squeeze in one more question, which is around any guidelines that you wish you had as you were building out these tech stacks, or anything you would recommend to the rest of the audience as they start to think about incorporating data and AI into their tech stacks.
So my recommendation is be very careful about the proliferation of different tools that you use. If you just think about the basic concept of AI, it's learning based on the underlying data, right? And so it's really important to actually capture that data properly. If you have the investment team spread across 6 different tools, they're going to be very reticent. There's going to be a lot of friction in terms of them actually having good compliance in terms of data entry, right? And so for us, we've really placed Affinity at the center of our entire tech stack because we found it to be a great tool to actually ensure that folks input their meeting notes, they change the status of a field when it needs to be changed, they're introducing a couple of structured fields that we asked them for, and we have really great compliance there, which we intend to use for all the AI tools that we're going to develop in the future. And so I think thinking about the number of tools that you're using, and then from a process perspective, whether the investment team is actually filling out what they're supposed to be filling out is equally as important.
I think to that point, it took me probably a year and a half until I did full-blown user interviews with our team to understand how they were using everything, to discover that everybody thought they were using our tools perfectly. And it was, excuse me, but a shit show. And being able to understand exactly where the processes were breaking ended up saving me significant amount of time later on so that I could rebuild or supplement. Okay, this isn't working, so let's find something that is more user-friendly, has a better UX, what have you. And really just like taking the time to diagnose each problem versus deciding this is better, period, versus better for you and you and you.
Yeah, I would put it in terms of on-ramps and guardrails. So be intentional about how you're going to approach these new technologies and tools. Make sure that you set expectations about what's appropriate and what's not, using these different tools and technologies for your staff. Simple things like basic policies and guidelines, making clear to your team, this is okay. You're fine to use an AI tool in Notion or Evernote. It's perfectly acceptable to use ChatGPT at our firm, but here's the guardrails. Do not copy any IP or proprietary data or board docs into a publicly available version of a generative AI, because then it trains the model and our private data could go out into the world. You think everyone might know these things, but it's actually critically important to think through what are the risks, what's our approach, what's our strategy at a high level. You don't have to get super into it, but just set clear expectations for everyone so that the way that these solutions are embraced doesn't put your firm at risk, and it allows everyone to sort of grow and try and experiment in a safe way.
Yeah. I think I sort of alluded earlier to, we're invested in how do we measure whether or not something was successful from day zero, and to avoid some of the things that we've talked about here. And so like that, I think, is something to consider from the outset. And the other thing that I found is that I have had to develop quite the vocabulary of analogies and metaphors to describe what the hell any of this stuff is to people. Even sophisticated technical users, it's like a new world of concepts. And so I think it was Feynman who had the quote about like, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job of faking how well I understand it to all the people. So it's one of those things of just getting really good at like the communication of this, like the upward management of, this is why we're doing this thing, because it unlocks this, which unlocks this, and all of these things are related in a way that doesn't also make you sound like a crazy person or like you're trying to boil the ocean all at once.
Yeah, thank you for sharing so much, all of your perspectives. I know we're right at time. We got to wrap up, but thank you so much for being part of the panel. This is such a fun conversation. I feel like we could just keep going forever and ever. It's a really fun topic to be discussing right now. So thank you so much for joining the panel, sharing your perspectives. And thank you all for listening.
For having us.
Thank you.